"Please, don't make me undress," she begged, her voice shaking so hard it barely sounded human. The snowstorm outside raged like the world was ending, slamming icy fists against the warehouse windows. Inside, beneath the flickering emergency lights, a powerful woman who had built an empire from nothing stood trembling, not from pride, not from anger, but from cold and fear. And the man everyone in the office called heartless watched her with clenched fists, knowing that in the next few seconds, he would either save her life or let her pride destroy it. Before we go any further, if you believe in kindness, in second chances, and in judging people by their actions instead of their reputation, take a second right now to like this video, comment where you're watching from, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to the channel. Stories like this remind us that even the coldest hearts can carry the warmest intentions. Armand had never cared what people thought of him. At least that's what everyone assumed. At 36, he was a single father raising a 7-year-old daughter on his own after losing his wife to illness. He worked nights as the head of security at one of the largest logistics companies in the city. He didn't smile much. He didn't attend office parties. He didn't flatter anyone. To most employees, he was just the cold single dad who did his job too seriously and left without a word. His boss, Mira Khanna, was the complete opposite. Confident, immaculate, untouchable. She was the youngest CEO the company had ever appointed. Known for her discipline and razor-sharp decision-making, employees feared disappointing her, investors admired her, competitors respected her. She walked through hallways like she owned every square inch of air she breathed. But that night, the storm changed everything. The city had shut down early due to extreme weather warnings, but Mira had insisted on staying late to review a high-stakes contract that could double the company's annual revenue. Armand had offered to call a driver when the wind began howling dangerously, but she waved him off. She was used to being in control. Then the power failed. The backup generator sputtered but couldn't handle the freezing surge. Within minutes, the heating system collapsed. The temperature inside the building began to drop rapidly. The storm outside blocked roads, snapped trees, and buried cars under thick layers of snow. Emergency services were overwhelmed. Armand knew the building's structure better than anyone. The main offices on the upper floors were exposed to large glass panels, which meant the cold would hit there first. The basement security wing, however, was insulated and contained emergency thermal blankets and portable heaters. He climbed the stairs 2 at a time and found Mira near her office window, hugging herself tightly, trying to call someone on a phone that had already lost signal. Her usually perfect composure had cracks running through it. He explained the situation quickly. The storm had sealed them in. The temperature was dropping faster than expected. They had to move downstairs immediately. She hesitated. Leaders aren't trained to look vulnerable. By the time they reached the basement, her hands were visibly shaking. Snow had blown in through broken seals upstairs, soaking the lower half of her clothes. Armand assessed the situation the way he would for his own child. Wet fabric in freezing conditions was dangerous. Hypothermia didn't wait for dignity. He brought out dry emergency clothing and thermal blankets. He turned his back respectfully and told her she needed to remove the wet layers before her body temperature fell further. That was when she whispered those words. "Please, don't make me undress." It wasn't arrogance, it wasn't flirtation, it was fear. Years of building armor around herself had made vulnerability feel like defeat. She was used to commanding rooms, not being helped in one. Armand didn't see a CEO in that moment. He saw a human being at risk. He told her calmly that this wasn't about pride, it wasn't about status, it was about survival. He stepped further away, keeping his eyes fixed on the concrete wall, giving her as much privacy as the small room allowed. Minutes passed in silence except for the wind screaming outside. When she finally wrapped herself in dry thermals and a blanket, she didn't look powerful. She looked small, exhausted, frightened. Armand started the portable heater and handed her a flask of warm water from the emergency kit. He checked her pulse the way he had learned to check his daughter's during her fevers. Steady but cold. Hours stretched long. The storm showed no mercy. The building creaked as if it might give up at any second. They were stuck together in that dimly lit basement, stripped of titles and assumptions. For the first time since he had joined the company, Mira really looked at him. She noticed the faint lines under his eyes that weren't from age but from sleepless nights. She noticed the worn-out edges of his gloves, repaired instead of replaced. She noticed the way he kept glancing at his phone, not for signal, but at the picture on his lock screen. A little girl smiling with missing front teeth. He wasn't cold. He was careful. When she asked about the child, something softened in him. He spoke quietly about his daughter, about braiding her hair badly every morning, about burning pancakes but pretending they were meant to be that way. He didn't speak like a security guard. He spoke like a father who had learned tenderness through loss. And for the first time in years, Mira felt something unfamiliar. Shame. Not shame for asking him to turn away earlier, but shame for never noticing the people who kept her world running. She had signed his paycheck every month without ever asking about the life attached to it. The temperature dropped again during the night, and Mira began shivering uncontrollably. Hypothermia can be deceptive. It makes the body feel warm before it shuts down. Armand recognized the signs immediately. He layered additional blankets around her and adjusted the heater closer, careful not to overheat the small room. He stayed awake the entire night, checking on her every few minutes, refusing to let himself drift into sleep. He thought about his daughter at home with the neighbor, about how she hated thunderstorms. He thought about how easily life could change in one unexpected moment. Around dawn, the storm finally weakened. Rescue teams reached the building by late morning. When the doors were forced open and warm air rushed inside, Mira felt like she was waking from a strange dream. But the impact of that night stayed with her. The following week, employees noticed something different. The CEO, who once walked past staff without pausing, began stopping to ask names. She initiated a full review of emergency protocols and upgraded safety equipment company-wide. She introduced healthcare benefits for lower-wage workers that had never existed before. She implemented flexible scheduling for single parents. And quietly, without making a public announcement, she promoted Armand. Not because he had saved her life, but because she had finally seen the depth of the man she had underestimated. Armand resisted at first. He didn't want charity. But she made it clear that it wasn't charity. It was recognition. His leadership under pressure, his crisis management skills, and his steady presence were exactly what the company needed. Their relationship never turned into romance. It turned into something rarer, mutual respect. Months later, during a company gathering celebrating record profits, Mira stood before hundreds of employees and spoke about that night without revealing details. She talked about storms, about vulnerability, about how strength sometimes means allowing someone to help you. She thanked the security team publicly, naming Armand among them. The applause that followed wasn't polite, it was heartfelt. Armand didn't like attention, but as he stood there, he realized something profound. Being strong didn't mean being distant. Being cold didn't mean lacking warmth. Sometimes people mistake silence for indifference. That night in the basement had not only saved a life, it had broken walls. Mira later visited Armand's modest apartment to personally thank his daughter for lending her father to the company. The little girl showed her drawings taped to the fridge, crayon sketches of a superhero wearing a security uniform. Underneath it, messy handwriting read, "My papa saves people." Mira felt tears rise unexpectedly. She had built skyscrapers of profit. But in that small apartment, she realized true wealth was something else entirely. If this story is touching your heart right now, take a moment to like the video and share it with someone who believes that people deserve to be seen for who they truly are. Your engagement helps more stories like this reach those who need hope. And before we reach the final moments, I want to ask you something special. Comment the word warmth if you believe that even the coldest nights can reveal the brightest hearts. Years passed, and that storm became part of company legend. New employees would hear whispers about the night the CEO nearly froze and the quiet security chief who stayed awake until sunrise. But the real story wasn't about freezing temperatures. It was about pride melting. It was about understanding that leadership without empathy is incomplete. It was about a single father who carried grief so quietly that the world mistook him for unfeeling. And it was about a powerful woman who learned that strength doesn't mean never needing help. On winter nights when snow begins to fall, Armand still checks the emergency kits twice. He still prepares for the worst. But now, when employees pass him in the hallway, they don't see a cold man. They see steady warmth. And Mira, whenever she looks out of her office window during a storm, remembers the basement light flickering. the heater humming, and the man who turned his back so she could keep her dignity. Sometimes, saving someone isn't dramatic. Sometimes, it's quiet, respectful, patient. Sometimes, the greatest act of kindness is simply standing guard while someone gathers the courage to be vulnerable. If this story moved you, if it reminded you that compassion can exist even in the harshest circumstances, please like, comment, and subscribe. Share this video with someone who needs to believe that people can change, and that the quiet heroes among us deserve to be seen. Because in a world that often feels cold, we don't need more power, we need more warmth.